I'm Andy, and it's my wife, well, Andrew and Karina Smith, but we're called Andy and Kiki. We're your missionaries in Uganda on the islands of Lake Victoria. Our focus is on the Buvuma Islands. It's about 52 islands in the Buvuma Island, in Lake Victoria. Lake Victoria is the second biggest in the world and has like 1,000 islands on it. So our little piece is these 50 islands, 52 inhabited islands. And that's where we serve and minister.
Wow. And you have 2 kids?
Yeah, we do. David and Jonathan. They are almost 9 and 11.
Wow.
Jonathan's birthday is tomorrow, and David's is next month. So we're pretty excited. This is Jonathan's first time. He's turning 9. It's his first birthday in the United States. So he's pretty stoked about that. Last year, there's been a lot of really exciting things islands. Our ministry, for those of you who've seen us, met us, you already know this maybe, but for those who are newer, our ministry is really coming alongside Ugandan nationals in the islands and helping them to be successful in reaching their people for Christ. So we do a lot more training and less our main focus is training to minister to their people. Like for example, my personal heart is in pastors training and in preparing God's church for his people. Let's just take a pause for just a moment. Come on down, boys, and say hi.
Hi.
Hey, guys.
You can come down. It's okay.
Are you Jonathan?
Are you Jonathan?
Yeah.
Jonathan and David. Good to see you guys.
You too.
When was the last time you guys came back to the States?
2 years ago. 2 years, I think.
Yeah.
What is the most exciting thing about being in the States this time compared to last time?
I don't know.
What's your favorite thing to do in the States?
Go for bike rides, visit Grandpa and Grandma, and our cousins.
Play with the cousin. What do you guys play?
Sometimes football. Sometimes we play football. Sometimes we'll play cowboys. Or we will sword fight with them. They made some wooden swords. So.
Wooden swords. Yep, that's awesome.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, boys. You can go outside and play or be upstairs, either way.
Okay, you can go outside. Take a break.
Good job.
It was good to see them.
Yeah, so we homeschool on the island and we homeschool here, so the COVID thing doesn't make much difference for that, which is nice.
So you were telling me about the exciting things happening on the islands, and recruiting local nationals to do the work, essentially.
Yeah, and not for them to do the work that we have in mind, but actually come alongside them and helping them to be successful in the vision God's given them, which is. So one of the things is our hearts very much are preparing the church, preparing Christians. It's not just a do good ministry. It's all focused on Jesus. And so everything we do is tied around evangelism and discipleship. But my personal heart is in pastors' preparation. And so we do a 2-year training program for pastors who are uneducated, who are not educated high enough to a level to go to mainland and go to a Bible college. Some of them can't write, and yet they're a pastor of a church. So how can we prepare them? How can we train them? And so we're doing a Bible storying curriculum that we wrote together with my mentor, who has also been a missionary with us in Uganda, is now back in the States. So this last year, I've been actually editing a teacher's manual for that our Ugandan leaders can take and use. It started out with us Americans teaching, and then a few of the Ugandans who are more educated also teaching. But we realized that as this is becoming more indigenous-led, they don't have a Bible college education to draw from. And so the way that it was being done, questions would be asked and they wouldn't know an answer, because they didn't have the Bible background and theology background. So we've been writing a teacher's manual for those who can at least read and write. And many of the ones who are actually teaching now can read and write. A few can't, and that's fine. But for those who can read right now, during this COVID-19 lockdown, I've been splitting my time between teaching the boys and writing the curriculum. So it's been a great opportunity for me to actually have the time to do something that I did not have time to do when I was in Uganda. So that's a blessing. Yeah, so as far as pastor training, but the school is also really exciting. We run we oversee, let me say, we don't run, it's run by Uganda nationals. Actually, the pastor's training, we have 2 different schools going right now on 2 different islands, more people in each school, pastors and elders of churches. But the high school, we have a local junior high and high school. It's a boarding school, Lingira Living Hope Secondary School on the islands. Right now it's shut down because of the COVID stuff, but it's been amazing, some of the things that God has done. But maybe just to highlight, because we've talked about like one student that we're really proud of, that he graduated from our school. He was from an island, no future on the islands. All of his brothers and sisters, older brothers, he's one of 30-some children of multiple. He has many different co-wives of his mom, and none of them got education. They believed in their family that anyone who would try and get an education, the family demons would kill that person. And so, but his mom and he and his one younger brother didn't believe that. They got saved, and they decided to show them what difference Christ could make. And so he went to school with his brother. They finished school. His brother finished a teaching degree. He finished sciences and went on to university, and actually and then from university to med school. And we just got his confirmation. He'll be graduating when this COVID thing calms down. He will graduate. He's finished his residency, everything. He'll be graduating as a full medical doctor. And we're super amazed and excited with him. And right now, with this COVID stuff, he's actually on another island, 30 miles out into the lake, at a clinic that we oversee. And he is helping, just volunteering, helping run that clinic right now, just to help. And it's just This is pretty cool. God's in the business of changing lives, and he loves the Lord, walks with the Lord, preaches, teaches in the church. Just awesome.
That is really awesome. Now, English is the kind of the national language of Uganda, right? Is there tribal languages? What's that?
Yeah.
So Uganda is the size of Oregon, approximately, with 52 tribes and 52 languages. So there are 3 main groups of people within that, but still you have so many different languages that they've made English their national language, which means that anybody that's gone to school knows English. Those who haven't been in school, they use, on our island, they use Swahili as the trade languages. But it depends on where you go, which trade languages are used.
So your education, your teaching, is that all in English then, I'm assuming?
For the high school, the high school is all in English. That's a requirement for the country of Uganda.
What about the pastors?
It's a Christian school. It's a Christian school. All the teachers are born again Christians, and and they are very focused on sharing the gospel with the students, and students gospel each other. They have tons, almost every day of the week, maybe even every day of the week, there is some kind of Bible program going on at the school. Whether it's a lunch prayer time, Bible studies in the evenings, mornings, something every day. And a lot of kids get saved. About 250 students in the school, and they don't have to be Christians to come. So many get saved when they come to the school. Many. It's actually amazing. They get saved and discipled for 4 years, Wow. So it really is a terrific opportunity for the gospel there.
In fact, one of our students, Danzy Frederick, he came to the island after his father sold off all their land and stuff to the witch doctor. And the family was trying to kill the father, and they had nothing left. And an uncle picked him up and brought him to the school. For some reason, he chose this one kid. So Danzy got saved, went on through high school. When he went on for higher education, he was voted the district president of the Scripture Union for the whole Jinja mainland district. And then now he's back teaching in the school. but he's a fireball. I mean, let me say he's passionate about the gospel and very purposeful. So whether it's in the community, right now he's helping with food distribution, with preaching, what they can do with the COVID problems going on. He's also been instrumental in his own family, brought his mom and his dad back together. And the both parents have gotten saved. Several of his brothers and sisters who had risen up to kill the father last year ended up getting saved the same week. I mean, it's just phenomenal what God has done.
That young man is doing great things, but he turned down a much more lucrative and better position, more honorable position, teaching at the Jinja High School, one of the biggest high schools in the country, and he was accepted there on a government job, and he started working there. He worked there for less than a year and he quit. He said, you know what, I want to come back to the islands. I want the whole focus of my being in school and teaching is the gospel, and I can't do it here in this public school. I want to go somewhere where I can make a difference for Christ. And so he's just an awesome young man. But there's a number of students like that. But another thing we want to highlight besides the school was the Islands of Hope ministry, which I'll let you talk about. Karina's a nurse and do a lot of medical stuff on the islands. And you want to share anything about Islands of Hope?
When I first went to the island back 17 years ago, there was a young gal from the islands who was trying to go to nursing school. So I helped somebody else to sponsor her in that. And she's grown up. She's a nursing officer at the main regional hospital on mainland in Jinja. But she and her husband are running the Islands of Hope ministry, branch of the ministry, which was begun by a pediatrician from Washington State, Dr. Dave, but they've completely turned it over to Annette and Dan. And so we go out every month. We go to the far islands where the government said that they are unable to provide any health care. So we found on these islands that a large number of the people were HIV positive because there had never been testing on those islands. There wasn't immunization. They had a measles outbreak go through and kill several of the children. The sanitation was horrid. One of the islands that we go to, there was actually no pit latrine on the entire island. So everybody was just doing their business in the lake and then drinking the lake water. And you can imagine the disease. Schools have now started. So we've been running the Islands
There were no schools on either of those islands.
Yeah. The Islands of Hope now has been running for a couple years. And already in these 2 years, we've seen the pit latrines are being put in. Schools have been started by their community. One of our guys, Ronnie, started meeting with the pastors because there actually were some pastors, but they were fighting with each other, and some were actually immoral and had stolen all kinds of stuff. It was a mess. So he started meeting with the believers and got a core group together that said that they were serious about following Christ. And every month that group meets together and just keeps expanding.
There's over 20 people now.
Yeah. So
it's a discipleship group.
The discipleship group, and that's being run by this Annette that I had the blessing of helping back all those many years ago in nursing school by her and her husband. Yeah.
And even as people line up for the immunizations and the prenatal pregnancy care for the women and HIV testing, as they're lined up and waiting, then we have a team of people that actually share the gospel with them and pray with them and whatever. So that's a tremendous ministry. So.
And going to those far islands, let me just say it's not a joke. So from our island, it's 4 hours to get to those islands. Most of the people come by mainland now because it's easier. There's a spot from mainland where it's easier to get through. But last year, twice, they almost capsized. They were in severe winds and ended up having to stay overnight on one of the islands with no supplies, just being forced to stay there because the waves and the boat were so incredible. And then they learned the next day that somebody else had capsized just before them, and they had all drowned in the very spot. So anyways, they're serving these Ugandans. We love them so much because they're such an inspiration, because they have given up what they could have in order to serve their own people out in the far areas. Yeah, and there are 50 some islands out there inhabited in our little chain of islands, and we can't get to them all. But well,
hopefully
we're trying. Some are so far. And the further you go, the more witchcraft. We've found human sacrifice, and a lot of that kind of stuff, which you probably are quite familiar with.
Heavy animism.
Exactly.
Heavy animism.
They say that there are a lot of Muslims and a lot of Catholics and a good number of Christians in Uganda, but the biggest percentage is animism, and that bleeds over into all the other religions. One time I asked a Christian lady who said she was a Christian, I asked her if she did any witchcraft. She said, "Oh, of course I don't do any witchcraft, except for my business, of course." So
there's a disconnect there for sure.
So that's probably this last year, except for the COVID stuff that's more recent. I'd love to talk about that when we get a chance, but that's been some of the things we'd like to highlight, that God is working. God is doing amazing things, but really focus on the Ugandan leadership, not us personally. I really believe that our role is not to do the ministry. Our role is to train them to do the ministry, because we won't be there always. That's their homeland, and that's our heart, is to prepare them the best we can to minister.
In Senegal, we ran into a situation where the husbands were educated, or when they got educated, but the wives never were. How does that kind of look for you guys in a pastoral dynamic at the church, or some situation like that?
I think in Uganda, it's true. They tend to focus more on the boys, right? If they're going to educate one in the family, it'll be a boy, definitely, because their purpose is that boy, then whoever they look at their children as the one who's going to support them when they get old.
The retirement fund.
That's their retirement plan, is their children. So that the young man would be able to make more money to support the family. So if they're going to educate only one or a few, it'll be the boys. But there has been a big push, especially by foreign NGOs in Uganda over a number of years, many years, that have focused on educating their daughters. And so that has made a big impact. And right as of right now, I think close to half, wouldn't you say, in the schools are girls, maybe even more.
Depends on, of course, the more Islamic areas, the fewer girls are educated. That's been the hardest thing. The Islamic fathers don't want to educate their daughters. But other than that, the Christians have really pushed for educating the girls as well as the boys. I
think more of a challenge, since in referencing church leadership, is the groups that we work with in the islands. The islands are hard to reach, and many people don't want to go there. And so you have a situation like with the old missionaries from early years, where the only people willing to go there sometimes are women. And so, whereas there are islands that have no males, no men who are in any way qualified to lead a church, and there are women who are there who love the Lord and are going there in particular to just be able to share the gospel with people because nobody else will do it. I know a woman in an island it's probably 40 or 50 miles from mainland, and she's been drug out of her house and beaten by the village leadership because she refused to give money to the local shrine, the local demons, and she's the only one. Wow. She was the only one in the village that would refuse, that would stand up for Christ, and she's preaching, and she started a church there. So one of the challenges that I face personally is, like, I personally believe that God intends men to lead churches. That's his plan. That's the way he does things. But there are many women who are on the islands who are uneducated, but who love the Lord and are willing to stand and preach. It's like, okay, well, what's my role in this? Like, well, do we say, no, I can't train you? Well, I can't say that. And so we train men and women both to serve the Lord in the islands. And in that training, I do present my personal interpretation of the biblical view of male leadership in the church. But at the same time, being able to say that with saying, look, if nobody's there to lead, go ahead, God bless you. So, it's kind of a funny thing it's a difficult line to walk, but with reference to women in education, that's my particular, that's one of the challenges that we've faced in the island. But some of those women are incredible heroes of the faith that are willing to suffer for Jesus, and no men are in their area.
Absolutely. I think you and I are similar in our thinking on this for sure. Because you look at the situation with polygamy as well, right? A one woman man. And if there's a man that loves the Lord and he's the only one there, what do we do with that? And, it's like an ethics dilemma. Is there anything that we can do to better support you that you can think of?
Can I first say something?
Yeah, absolutely.
When we first went out, when we got married, I was there first for 4 years. And then God brought Andy to the island, which is a fun story. But when we first went out together, Andy's dad told him, the most important work you're going to do is loving your own wife and family. And it's just been incredible, because you've seen any society where darkness rules, the more powerful person demands their own way, right? So men in generally are considered way more valuable, more important, and able to mistreat their children. And you can try to work on that on a whole society level, with the adults. But we felt that the little thing of bringing our children was something small. This year, Andy's parents came back out to the island, and he reminded us of that word that he had said, and said, when I look around at the Ugandan families that you have, I'm just blown away to see the men loving their wives and teaching their children and caring for playing with their children. It's something that has been so foreign to them. And it's begun like a little mini revolution in the families. And among the Ugandan family members, one of the greatest passions, I think, that almost everyone cares, besides whether it's really been awesome to see. Some of them have started up like kind of formal family ministries, and others have just become counselors in their village. And so it's neat that even as your church, as you pray for us, just to also remember that in your own little lives, in your own places, you become also that impetus of change and transformation just through your own family, and to see what God does in that.
That's a good word for sure.
When I went to the island, I think there's only one or two couples that were actually married of all the people that we knew in all the islands,
including the pastors.
Most of us lived together. And now there are many through the influence of the ministry there in the islands. But
that are even starting. Some of them have been living together, even with the same woman, for 30 years.
Right.
And now they're starting to make a covenant. Like they're going in front of their church and making a covenant with this woman. And others are beginning their families. Like they didn't first go out and try all the different women. They first started with one.
Wow.
And marrying her, making that covenant publicly.
And it's the example of these older ones who are sanctifying. They call it sanctifying their marriages. And it's their example is help the younger ones to say, oh, you mean we should do that? Oh, let me start, and let's start right. And it's been a blessing to see that change in the culture of the islands.
That is so neat. Yes, it's really fascinating to see the change and that you're fortunate, or providentially led to be there at this time to see the change and be that example. The incarnate kind of ministry that you get. Not only are you proclaiming the good news, but you're showing it through the love of your spouse and your children. And I'd like to ask some fun questions. So what is your, and each of you should answer, but what is your favorite movie?
My favorite movies are the Bourne movies. I
Bourne
enjoy
movies.
the Bourne movies.
That's
Yeah.
the second missionary that said that, just by the way.
Are you serious?
Yeah, yeah.
We're going forth to conquer. I don't know. What's your favorite movie? I don't have any idea.
I have no idea either. I'm really not much of a movie person, I have to say.
TV show,
So,
maybe?
no.
Okay.
I get her to watch NCIS with me.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, that's been going on forever. Favorite book outside of the scripture, of course.
I'd say my favorite devotional is Streams in the Desert.
Okay, yeah.
I've loved that devotional since I was a teenager. I just, every once in a while, I'll pick it up and it has the right word for the right day.
My favorite devotional is My Utmost for His Highest by Oswald Chambers. That's
really good.
untouchable, yeah.
Yeah. Yesterday we got the Chronicles of Narnia, and so the boys are already devouring those. They're enjoying them immensely.
My favorite author is Tom Clancy.
Mm-hmm. What's your favorite Tom Clancy story?
Oh, I'm not sure. I like them. I like a lot of them.
For sure. I'm sensing a theme here with the Bourne movies.
Yeah,
and the Tom Clancy
story.
Clancy,
yeah.
A little bit of
I
adventure.
grew up hunting and fishing and hiking, and yeah.
All right, favorite food.
Steak. Pot roast. Yeah, meat and potatoes.
Ice cream.
Oh,
Ice
yeah.
cream.
That count
Good
as a
choice.
food?
That's a food group.
Cheese. All the dairy we can't get over there.
Yeah.
Favorite type of music.
Worship.
Yeah.
Worship and hymn.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Southern gospel.
What is your favorite
I like country music
worship
too.
song? Favorite worship song?
Wow. Lately, I've been thinking through Day by Day. Strength it gives with every passing moment. Strength I find. Meet my trials here.
Wow.
She's been having some health issues, and that's been a special thing, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you have any last words that you want to share with the congregation before we end this recording?
Yeah, I'd like to share a little about the COVID-19 in Uganda right now and stuff that's going on, if at all possible. Just briefly, the COVID actually hasn't affected Uganda very much because they have only like 100 people who have been affected in the whole country. But the shutting down of the economy in Uganda has had a humongous impact. A lot of people going hungry, even people you wouldn't expect, and people that we know that aren't so poor are on 1 meal a day rations. There's a lot of starvation and hunger going on right now because of that. They've completely shut down all transportation. You can't even drive your car or take any public transport anywhere in Uganda without special permission from the government. So it really is a dire situation food-wise in Uganda right now. So like we sent money to buy food, and so our team on the ground just bought 3.5 tons of food and got permission to transport it out to the islands and hand it out. And they're actually using the pastors from our training program to be the ones to hand out in their villages the food. And then the second issue that's going hand in hand with that, there's a third one as well, but one issue is there's right now there's a big locust problem in northern Uganda, so a lot of the crops are being damaged. So now we're worried about what's the food gonna be like in a few months when they're, so we're looking at this as potentially being not just a short-term, but maybe a mid-term issue. And then also right now, just by bad luck, there's this huge flooding going on with Lake Victoria. So it's a big rainy season, and the water is actually of Lake Victoria. Lake Victoria is massive. It's like 100 miles across, and it's reached the highest level in recorded history.
Wow.
So flooding all around the island. Now on these islands, they're just building mud huts next to the shore. And so many villages are flooded, houses destroyed, and people with no place to live, no place to sleep. And because of the COVID lockdown, they can't travel to mainland to their family's home. They can't go anywhere. They're stuck on the island, and they have no place to stay. And so they're getting rained on. They have no place to stay. They have no food to eat. They can't get a job. Everything is shut down. And so it really is a bad situation right now in Uganda. And so we don't yet even know how to help people with the housing situation. It's a little bit tricky because of cultural issues. You can't just be like, hey, let me build a house for you. There's cultural issues with that that we need to be careful of. And if we build for one, that means we have to build for so-and-so else and their cousin. And we just have to figure it all out. And so our leadership on the ground is trying to meet this week with the leadership of some of the different villages and trying to figure out what needs to be done, what is the good way forward to help the whole of different communities, and what would our role be as Shepherd's Heart International Ministry in helping them rebuild, because you're talking about many thousands of people throughout the islands without a place to stay. So we'll be putting that in future newsletters as we find out how we can help.
Yeah.
But this didn't take God by surprise.
Right.
He knew, and he knows, and he has a plan. And I believe that we're part of the plan, all of us. We're part of God's plan to help our brothers and sisters in different places around the world. Not only Uganda, but as you said, Senegal and other places around Africa and around the world, and even here at home in America. There's lots of missions we can do in America right now. There's a lot of need. So, yeah. But we love you guys, and we appreciate you. For those of you we know there at Sierra Vista, hi, we love you. We're missing you. We were hoping to get to come. They're actually in May here, end of May, and our entire speaking schedule got thrown out the window with COVID. So we're just waiting to see how this all shakes out before we reschedule. But we do hope to get to see you when everything calms down.